A Tommy Freeman hat-trick coupled with brilliant defence helps Northampton to the final. My name's Mark, let's talk rugby. What a great game of rugby that it was, really befitting of a semi-final. Repeat of last year's semi-final, and we had the same kind of drama as well. Two brilliant teams going at each other. First up, Northampton, they're playing the ball on the ground. Leinster go to the corner, go to the maul, but then Northampton make it unplayable and turn it over. And that's the kind of defence we saw from Northampton for the whole game, just not giving Leinster an inch. Then they have to soak up pressure, in the opening minutes. But then James Ram collects a loose kick from Leinster, runs it back, finds Finn Smith. He then picks a lovely diagonal line, gets to the outside, and then he puts Freeman away over to score the opening try, converted for 7-0. Leinster's then, that's their first points conceded in this year's knockout stages. And, Northampton getting the starter that they really needed in this game. I talked about it before. If they could get a start against Leinster and make Leinster chase the game, you completely, rip up the script. And that's what they did here. Then we have an armed tackle from Pollock on Van der Fleer. Prendergast makes it 7-3. Leinster then swarm Northampton close to the line. They turn the ball over and beginning to up the pace, win another penalty to go to the corner. Northampton collapse them all. They get a warning at that stage. Back to the corner again from Leinster. Northampton managed to halt them all, but then as they're trying to defend Leinster's attack, they knock it on. So we have a scrum to Leinster. Bat get free kicked at that scrum. Leinster go quickly. Prendergast with a bullet pass out to Tommy O'Brien. He goes over in the corner. Conversion is missed. It's 8-7. They then win a penalty as Northampton are off feet. Kick the ball to the corner. Healy then replaced by Porter. Comedy team were talking about, it's unlucky for Healy as if it was an injury, but we've seen this season a lot where Porter comes on around about the 20-minute mark. So I think it was probably a tactical switch. It was planned and not, some kind of injury. Northampton then managed to turn Leinster over at the line out, and Freeman breaks. And Freeman I thought was brilliant today. Finn Smith as well. He puts in a great kick, and that forces Tommy O'Brien to play it and touch the line. Northampton win a penalty off the back of that, and Finn Smith pops it over for 10-8. Leinster then back on the front foot. They work it into 22. Northampton, no clear release. Low taps it. Leinster, they go right, and then Van der Fleer has the power to get over. Lovely offload from the deck from Deegan in the build-up. Converted for 15-10. Langdon then, he goes to the bin for Northampton for another penalty given away at the breakdown in the build-up. That period, a lot of pressure on Northampton, and he paid the price for it. Pollock then just picks a lovely line coming onto the ball at pace from a ruck, round about halfway, goes through a gap between Porter and Snyman. Then he has the pace to go around Prendergast and finish. Amazing try, converted for 17-15. And that was, I think, one of the key scores of the game, because Leinster had just gotten themselves, into a decent lead, or like a lead at least, and Northampton hit back and get back in front. They didn't allow Leinster to build anything on top of that. Northampton then, they're back up to 15 and they strike again. They shifted from a line out to the right, and they've got numbers. Freeman goes over in the corner. Conversion hits the outside of the post, 22-15. They're finding space on the edge of that Leinster blitz, and they really are exploiting. And that's what you need against this Leinster team. You have to get to that width, but Leinster make it so hard. But Northampton doing really well, tying him in the middle and then going out the back and having the speed of ball and also, the handling skills to get that ball out there. Augustus then collects a loose ball and then offloads to Freeman, and he goes in to complete his hat-trick. Conversion missed, 27 points to 15. Northampton with a healthy lead at half-time. Into second half then, Leinster tap a penalty 5 minutes out. Van der Fleer crashes over, converted for 27 points to 22. And, feeling already the next score in the game could be important, because at that kind of stage of the game, if Leinster get into the lead, suddenly the complexion of the game changes. And Leinster, that's what they normally do around this time, is they either build on a lead or they get in the lead and then they make the other team chase the game. But they weren't able to do it in this one. Doris managed to strip the ball in a tackle, kicks a brilliant 50-22, but Leinster pinged for that. The same old obstruction at the line-out thing that we've seen before. The player goes up and then the lifters come in behind them to try and create a bit of a wedge. They get pinged for it. Ireland get pinged for it. Leinster get pinged for it. All the Irish provinces get pinged for it all the time. I don't know why they keep on doing it. But then Leinster putting so much pressure on Northampton now, with their kicking, and they're competing at the breakdown. Northampton had certainly the better kicking game in the first half, but in this period of the second half, Leinster are beginning to edge that. Then Porter off feet at a ruck. It's just inside the Leinster half. Smith puts it over for 30 points to 22. A little breathing room for Northampton now. Leinster then worked the ball into the 22, but great Northampton defence forces a knock-on from Snyman. He was looking for an offload. He didn't have support, and it went forward. But then, shortly after, Bird gets over the ball, wins a penalty to Leinster. Back on their front foot, to the corner they go. Bird claims the line out. The maul drives over. Van der Fleer is the scorer. Conversions missed, 30 points to 27. Northampton then, they work the ball into the 22. They suck in the defence. Leinster really narrow and they go wide. Keenan bites in and then Ram goes over to score in the corner, convert for 37 points to 27. And that's so important for Northampton, keeping that scoreboard ticking over, making sure that there's a target there for Leinster to chase, that they're not falling behind. We then have a Timo check for a high hit on Slimani by Josh Kemeny. It's, ultimately shoulder to chin, but it does hit the chest first. And because most of the power went through the chest, it's a yellow card and not a red. And I think that was a pretty fair decision from the referee. Tommy O'Brien then goes through a gap. Leinster on the attack, out to low. They work to win 10 metres. Recycle, force a penalty in front of the sticks. Pollock, no clear release from him. Leinster then tap the penalty. They've got a set of forwards lined up to take it. Then they completely switch them out to backs and they go left out to low and he scores in the corner. Prendergast nails the touchline conversion, 37 points to 34. Leinster then turn Northampton over and they look to break from the 22. Tommy O'Brien kicks it downfield. He's tackled late by Augustus. Penalty from where the ball lands. Leinster decide to go to the corner. They could have kicked the 3 points and sent it to extra time at that stage. Hindsight being, 2020 and all that. But maybe they'll regret that decision. Who knows? But they could have kicked that. Northampton could have gone up the other end, won a penalty, scored a try, dropped a goal, whatever. So you can't just say that it was going to be a draw if they'd done that either, because there was certainly plenty of time for Northampton to score from the kickoff. But Coles then gets over the ball, turns it over. Great defence from Northampton there. And it feels like it could be the winning of the game. Leinster though work it back into 22. Clock is ticking down. We have a TMO check. The ball's gone loose in the corner. It looks like Ross Byrne has possibly grounded it, but the ball's hit the flag at the corner, and there's all sorts of things going on in there. Coles is pinged for no release, and he ends up going to the bin, and the possible try is decided it's no try because the ball has actually hit the the base of the post rather, or the flag rather than just hitting the flag. So it means that, and there was a potential knock-on in there. So definitely no try. So penalty to Leinster. It's all coming down to this. They decide they're going to tap it. They tap it and they shift it inside and they go, and you can see Northampton are competing. They get they drive over the ball. They've won the ball now, and now they're running down the last 30 seconds of the game, on their own line. Really brave, really brave from them. And then they get the ball out of the ruck. Clock is in red, off the pitch, and they're in the final. And, looking at the whole game, absolute deserved winners of the game, because when they were in the ascendancy and they were getting to that space, they were exploiting it, they were getting their scores, and when they had to defend, brilliant defense from them. Yes, they gave away some penalties, some yellow cards. Sometimes that happens to you, but they kept the line intact, especially there at the end. Like Leinster with 2 bites of the cherry to potentially score a try to win the game. We've seen them in so many games being able to do that, being able to get over and score. Northampton denied them on both occasions, even turned the ball over on the second occasion, getting off the field and winning the game. And they go forward now to the final. And we're going to talk about the stats, and then we'll talk about each of the teams as well. So let's have a look. Let me pull up the stats. Let's hope that they're up to date by this stage. There we go. Okay. So first of all, 5 tries scored each, back and forth the whole game. Brilliant game to watch for the neutrals. A bit of a heart attack as a Leinster fan to watch, but also a hugely enjoyable match. Honestly, obviously gutted to lose the game, but, I'd rather, it's kind of weird. Like I'd rather, lose the game and it be a brilliant game of rugby than, winning the game and it being terrible, or there being some controversy where we'd won the game or wherever like that. As a rugby fan, I really enjoyed the game. As a Leinster fan, obviously, there is disappointment there, but, let's keep going from here. So on attack, meters made 381 for Leinster, 549 for Northampton. Just shows how potent they were in attack. Carries 161 to 101 for Northampton. Clean breaks 8 for Leinster, 10 for Northampton, and that tells the story as well there. Northampton be able to break the line so many times, but also tells about the shift from the first half to the second half, because Northampton hit 8 clean breaks on around the 30th minute, so they only got at most 2 clean breaks in the second half. So it was kind of a rear action from them in the second half. But again, the most important thing is they took their chances. Compare that to Leinster, how many chances Leinster had, and Northampton were able to keep them out, on so many occasions, either, turning the ball over, or forcing mistakes from Leinster. Then defenders beaten 23 from Leinster, 35 for Northampton. Offloads 12 from Leinster, 7 for Northampton. Passes 177 to 88. Possession 58% for Leinster, 42 for Northampton, and territory 64 to 36. And a lot of that was that second half where Leinster were ratcheting up the pressure, and we see them do it to so many teams. They just keep on putting the pressure on, and teams finally crack. Northampton never cracked today. They stood in there. There were some wobbles, but crucially, they never let Leinster, get that lead in the last quarter of the game. And I've talked about it so many times on the channel that, with this Leinster team, if you make them chase the game in the last 20 minutes, you've got a brilliant chance, a better than 50-50 chance of winning the game, because this Leinster team are unused to and actually very poor at trying to chase a lead down in the last 20 minutes. And we saw it again in this game. Like other teams I'm convinced if the roles are reversed, that Northampton probably would have taken the kick to square the game up, where Leinster went to the corner and then back to defence to, either send it to extra time, turn the ball over, get back down the field again and score again. Leinster went for the jugular, and Northampton just absolutely brilliant being able to stop them going over. And I could see as well, before the tap that Leinster took, the last tap, they looked nervous, honestly. You could see Kelleher was there. He was looking at the rest of the pack, for a bit of kind of guidance. What exactly are we doing here? And, they never looked like properly set for it. It looked like there was a bit of nerves there of realizing that their chance to get to the final relied on everything going absolutely right with that tap, and it didn't go absolutely right for them. Onto defence then, tackles made, 98 from Leinster, 171 for Northampton. Leinster then at 68%, so poor for them. We expect them, with the type of defence they have, to miss tackles compared to other teams, but we also expect them to be somewhere in the 70s. Like, we've seen them often this year, kind of around 73 to 77 is kind of where Leinster normally are. So, again, Northampton making them miss more tackles than normal. Northampton then at 79%. So, better than Leinster. And, we see it in the Champions Cup as well. The standards in terms of tackle success drop down from domestic leagues. Domestic leagues normally expect teams to be somewhere in the mid 80s, but getting close to 80% against this Leinster team is really good from Northampton. Then on to set piece. So lineouts 1, 13 for Leinster, 6 for Northampton. Leinster 87% in the lineout. They could have gone to the corner instead of tapping with that last penalty and back their lineout, but again, not sure, I think, on what they were doing there. 6 lineouts from Northampton, 1, 75% for them. Scrums then 4 for Leinster and 7 for Northampton, both 100% on their own put in. I think both teams maybe won a penalty as well on their own put in. Then kicks from hand, 37 to 36. So, both teams kicking a lot. 1,384 metres from Leinster, 1,122 metres for Northampton. It's very rare you see both teams in a game kicking over 1,000 metres. But that I come back to this again, right? People talk about, too much kicking in the game, but who, looking at that game, who would say that was a boring game of rugby? It's the kicking that creates the space and creates not just the space, but creates the alignment of opposition defenses that can be exploited by running the ball. And that's what both of these teams did here. But I thought Northampton, especially in the first half, did it better than Leinster. Then retained kicks, 4 for Leinster, 5 for Northampton. Onto the breakdown. Rucks 1, 86 for Leinster, 58 for Northampton. 2 rucks lost each. Ruck success, 96% for Leinster, but Northampton did such a good job getting in there, slowing that ball down for them. So even though they were winning the ball, they had to commit extra men to the ruck, and then Northampton were set in defence as well once they got the ball out. 91% for Northampton. Turnovers 1, 10 for Leinster, 8 for Northampton. Some really key turnovers for Northampton, won by the likes of Coles and Pollock. 2 of them really prominent for them in defence. Mauls then 6 for Leinster, 3 for Northampton. 67% success for Leinster and 67% for Northampton, and maybe that 67% is one of the reasons why Leinster didn't go to the corner with that final penalty. You've got 2 things to go wrong there, really. first of all, the line out, you could lose the line out, you could overthrow, it mightn't be straight. And then it's the maul after that. If the maul was going a bit better, maybe they would have thought about going to the corner. Maul meters gained then, this number, I always say it's wrong, and it is, because it says 4-2, right? And what that actually is Leinster 67% maul success. They had 4 successful mauls, and Northampton 67% maul success from 3 mauls. They had 2 successful mauls. So the numbers in there are actually successful mauls. Anyway, on to the next bit then, discipline. Penalties conceded 8 for Leinster, so keeping it in in single figures, great for them. 14 penalties conceded for Northampton, 3 yellow cards. Not going to be happy with their discipline. What they will be happy with, though, is how they manage those yellow card periods. They might have conceded scores in some of them, but they never let Leinster kind of double up on their scores, and that was crucial, because if Leinster had done that, they would have taken the lead in the game, and then things would have switched in terms of who's chasing and who's trying to pull away. So how they manage those yellow card periods, absolutely brilliant from them. Okay, so let's talk about each of the teams. To start with the Leinster team, all through the knockout stages, they didn't concede a point. Then they conceded an early try, and hitting back, they got themselves in front in that first half. But then Northampton were able to put 2 extra tries on them before half time to have that lead going in at the break. And then second half, then Northampton were able to reply to each of their scores. And I've talked about it so many times with this Leinster team, is that's when Leinster are vulnerable, when they have to chase the game. Because again, because these players are rotated so much, it means that Leinster lost 2 games in the URC this year. They lost against the Bulls by a point, and then they lost against Scarlets there as well in the URC, right? Hardly any of these players played in those games. Sneeman, Slimani, Deegan, Tommy O'Brien, and I don't know whether Barrett played. Maybe Barrett played in the loss against the Bulls, but then they were immediately pulled back to Dublin, basically preparation for the game against Glasgow, I think, in the knockout stages. But other than that, the rest of this team didn't play in those games, so they're not used to playing in that kind of game for Leinster, and they're not used to what's their go-to when they're down with 10 minutes to go, or 5 minutes to go, or a minute to go. It's just not in their bank of experience to be able to say, okay, well, remember what happened to us the last time, for this one, we're gonna do it again. They don't have that, and we've seen them previously, twice against La Rochelle in finals, and in this semi-final as well, where they had chances at the end to go for a score to win the game, and they weren't able to get it done. And the same thing here. So that's definitely something that they're going to have to fix. They did this year, in fairness to Leinster, like they did for most of the season have more frontline players playing in the URC and not rotating them out and resting players as much. But for just coming up to the semi-final, then they decided to revert back to the old way of let's just rest everybody coming in for this. So whether that policy has an impact on results like this or not, it's hard to say, honestly, because we haven't seen the opposite of it. So we can't say. Some people will say about Leinster, that they weren't tested all the way through the knockout stages, and that's why, Northampton caught them out and etc. For me, I talked about it previously as well, that it's one of those ones where it's another, hindsight is 2020, right? If Leinster had, if Leinster had won this one, then people would say that, Leinster, they had an easy ride through the knockout stages, and they were, players are rested, and therefore they were fresher for this, and Northampton just ran out of steam in the end. And, opposite happens in this one, so therefore Leinster were undercooked or whatever, right? It's hard to say whether it's actually true or not, because you're basically looking at the result and then looking at what happened before the result, and kind of tying things together. So same thing as I said about, my speculation about the way they rotate their team. Because we don't see the opposite happening, we can't really nail it down to something. But, Leinster's performance in this one, they, at times they look good. They had periods where they were trying to ratchet up the pressure on Northampton, but, Northampton's defence was so good that Leinster had to go right to the edge of their skills and their abilities, and therefore, mistakes meant that they weren't getting the momentum that they would in other games. So for Leinster, another year with no European trophy. This time, at least, I guess they're spared losing the final compared to the last 3 years. But now for next year, they're going to have to look at what's missing from this team to get back to the final if they can, and to potentially go on and lift the trophy. But for Leinster, they were brilliant all the way through the tournament up until now. They played a good game today, but they were beaten by the better team. And for me as a Leinster fan, that's I'm not going to complain about. I'm sure you find plenty of Leinster fans complaining about referees' decisions or whatever, right? But for me, no. It's if you lose the game and you're blaming the referee, then I always find people that blame referees, they never like win a game and complain about we should have lost that game, the referee was terrible. No fan is ever going to say that, right? So for me, I thought the referee was actually good today. I'm sure there's plenty of Leinster fans, of a certain persuasion, who may differ with me. But yeah, I thought he had a very good game today. But yeah, Leinster, no complaints from me, honestly, on that defeat. I think it was absolutely fair and square. On to Northampton then. So, they got that early score in the game. Leinster came back. They got ahead. Northampton didn't panic. They replied straight away, and then they added to their scores as well before half time. Then into the second half, Leinster got that score to get themselves back in touch. And there was a period there where Leinster were putting on a lot of pressure, and they could have gone ahead in the game. And Northampton resisted that, and then they worked the ball upfield. They got that penalty, and they got out to an 8-point lead. And getting that 8-point lead for me felt like that was a really big chance for them to win the game, because after that, then Leinster score a try, but they're not going ahead, even if they had converted it, which they didn't. And then Northampton able to get that extra try then to go out to 37 points and make it a 10-point game. And, once they got to there, you knew they had a big chance of winning the game. Second half was all about defense for them. The first half was about absolutely stellar attack from them, and but the defense in that second half was just as stellar from my point of view. And We talked about, the likes of Pollock and Coles, both excellent getting in there, but the entire line, very few times, Leinster were able to really dent that line and get forward momentum. Leinster had to, work for every meter, work really hard for every score that they got in that second half. They gave nothing easy away to them. Yes, they had 3 yellow cards, but again, during those yellow card periods, they didn't, they weren't shrinking violets. They weren't, worried about, let's just try and keep them out. They were able to as well have a threat. Again, that kicking game helping them out a lot, turning the Leinster players, the chase on the kicks, putting pressure on, massive pressure at the breakdown, whether they won the ball or not, making a mess for Leinster and just making it really difficult for Leinster to, exploit the extra man when they had it, and to get real momentum in the game where it felt like there was very rarely any time in the game where you felt like it was almost inevitable that Leinster were going to score the lead score of the game in that second half. Even there towards the end where they had a couple of penalties close to the line, it still felt like their Northampton defence was good enough, and it was up to Leinster to win the game rather than Northampton kind of running out of steam and not having numbers, etc. They were always numbered up. And they did excellently in there. And, it's full credit to them. Last year, they lost to Leinster in the semi-final, same venue. They were the team who were behind and then came back in the second half and almost did it. So pretty much a reversal of fortunes between these two. And I have to say, from the point of view of the Northampton fans, that I met last year as well, they were, great to talk to before the game and very gracious in defeat as well, after the game as well. And those are the kind of fans, that I love to talk to, because you're going to get just a genuine conversation and genuine love for the game of rugby. You're not going to get any bull from them about, this, that, or the other, we should have won. That's the way I try to be as best as I can, in these kind of situations as well, is that, if you watch my channel, I pretty much never criticize officials. And there's a reason for it, is because, my dad, when he was alive, he used to always get on the back of referees. And then, it didn't matter whether it was football, rugby, whatever sport it was, right? The referee was always against his team. And then I kind of developed the opposite way, to try and see it from, a neutral point of view, even if I'm cheering on a team. So I try to do that as best I can, or hopefully, I'm sticking to that on the channel. If I ever do come across as biased, certainly pull me up on it, because I wouldn't want to do that. But I want to be as fair as possible. And from my point of view, again, today, Northampton absolutely deserve winners. I now hope that they go on and they lift the trophy as well, because that display today, I think, deserves for them to go on and lift the trophy. But having said that, whichever team wins the semi-final tomorrow, it's going to be an absolutely, massive task for them again to lift the game one more time against another behemoth in Europe. But for now, Northampton fans, celebrate. You absolutely deserve it.